The vaults were never meant to be seen. Not in the way that they are now, broken open, flooded, burned, abandoned, or still sealed long after their purpose had expired. Before the war, they existed only as a reassurance, a promise printed on posters, a calm voice on a television screen, a door that would close behind you and keep the future out. And that promise was not entirely false, but it was never complete. Because the Vault program was not a single idea carried out imperfectly. It was a system built in two parts, one meant to function and one meant to observe what happened when it didn't. And tonight, we are opening the archive on that system. To the American public, the vaults were simple. They were shelters, massive underground complexes designed to protect a portion of the population from nuclear war. Vault-Tec sold safety, continuity, and preparedness. The language was clean, reassuring. Prepare for the future. Secure your family. Rebuild tomorrow. The vaults were marketed as civil defense infrastructure, the logical extension of Fallout shelters scaled to a national level. Vault-Tec's advertising emphasized engineering excellence, life support systems, food recyclers, water purification, and social stability. Entry selection was framed as logistical necessity, not exclusion. Someone had to go first, and someone had to stay behind. What the public was not told was that survival was not the program's only objective, because buried beneath the language of protection was a second mandate, one never advertised, never debated publicly, and never meant to be understood by the people it would affect. The Vault program did not consist of identical facilities operating under a single plan. Some vaults were designed to operate as advertised, sealed communities meant to preserve human life, social order, and institutional knowledge for a fixed period of time before eventual re-emergence. Others were not. These vaults were engineered around variables, constraints, artificial pressures introduced deliberately, not accidentally. They were meant to test how people behaved when systems failed, or were made to fail. Vault-Tec itself classified vaults into different functional categories during planning and construction. Among these vaults were control vaults, baseline environments, and experimental vaults, each structured around a specific condition. The existence of control vaults is essential to understand the program, because experiments without controls produce nothing of value, and Vault-Tec knew this. A control vault was designed to function normally. Its systems were stable. Its social structure was conventional. Its population selected to represent a manageable cross-section of pre-war American society. Its overseer was given standard authority and guidance. Its experiment, if it could be called one, was simply survival. These vaults existed to answer a basic question. What happens when human beings are isolated underground for decades under ideal conditions. Without controls, every other vault would be meaningless. Data from experimental vaults required comparison, a baseline against which deviation could be measured. Several vaults are identified as controls or near controls, either explicitly or through documentation indicating a lack of experimental variables. Vault 8, which later became Vault City, is among the clearest examples. Its systems operated as designed. Its population followed protocol. Its eventual emergence led to the founding of a structured, technologically advanced post-war settlement. Similarly, Vault 3 functioned as intended for generations before external interference destroyed it. Not due to internal design flaws, but because of post-war contact. These vaults demonstrate that Vault-Tec knew how to build functional shelters. Control vaults were not acts of mercy. They were instruments of measurement. Vault-Tec's long-term objectives required understanding how human societies behaved across multiple conditions: isolation, scarcity, authority structures, environmental stress, and technological dependency. A functioning control vault provided comparative data. How does a population maintain order without external governance? How do institutions evolve over generations? What cultural norms persist when the world outside is gone? Without this data, the results of experimental vaults would be uninterpretable. You cannot measure deviation unless you know what normal looks like. This is foundational scientific methodology, and Vault-Tec employed scientists who understood that. Experimental vaults were designed around specific variables that were introduced intentionally. These were not accidents, not cost-cutting failures, nor unforeseen consequences of rushed construction. They were built this way on purpose. Each experimental vault introduced one or more controlled stresses: altered population demographics, artificial scarcity or abundance, manipulated authority structures, psychological pressure, biological experimentation, and technological intervention. The vault itself was the laboratory, and the residents were not informed participants. Some experiments were social. Vault 11 conditioned its population to believe that annual human sacrifice was required to keep the vault operational. A lie sustained entirely through automated systems and misinformation. Vault 15 deliberately mixed mutually hostile ideological groups within a confined space, producing long-term fragmentation rather than cohesion. Other experiments were psychological. Vault 106 introduced psychoactive substances into the air supply. Vault 112 placed residents into virtual reality stasis, trapping them in a controlled simulation governed by a single individual. Others crossed biological and ethical boundaries. Vault 87 conducted forced exposure to the forced evolutionary virus, resulting in generations of mutation and suffering. Vault 12 was deliberately designed to fail its radiation shielding, exposing inhabitants slowly over time. In none of these cases was the outcome unintended. Experiments do not exist in isolation. Vault-Tec's system only works if both types of vaults operate simultaneously. Control vaults provide baseline data, experimental vaults provide deviation. Together, they form a matrix. This structure mirrors real-world scientific research, ethically dubious research, but methodologically sound. Vault-Tec didn't invent that logic. It simply applied it at an unprecedented scale. The key difference is consent. None was given. Vault-Tec did not operate independently. Government contracts, classified memoranda, and joint planning efforts indicate awareness at high levels of federal authority. The Vault program required legislative approval, funding, land access, and security coordination. What remains unclear, and must remain stated as such, is how much detail was known and by whom. Some officials likely understood the experimental nature of certain vaults. Others may have approved frameworks without reviewing specifics. Bureaucratic compartmentalization ensured plausible deniability. Responsibility was fragmented. No single individual had to own the outcome. Vault-Tec's structure insulated its planners from its subjects. Executives did not live in the vaults. Scientists did not raise families inside experiments. Overseers were often given partial information, just enough to administer, but not quite enough to understand the larger system. That distance was intentional. It allowed the program to proceed without resistance from those implementing it. The Vault program succeeded technically. It did generate data. It did preserve populations. It extended human survival beyond the war. But it failed ethically. Entire generations lived and died inside environments designed to break them. Children were born into experiments they could never escape. Some vaults succeeded in maintaining life while eroding dignity, autonomy, and trust. Others collapsed entirely, not because humanity failed, but because the system was never meant to sustain it. The post-war world did not emerge from the vaults as a unified society. It emerged fragmented, mistrustful, and unevenly developed. That was not an accident. The vaults did not produce a blueprint for reconstruction. They produced divergent outcomes, and that divergence served a purpose. The Vault programs were never meant to be one experiment. It was a framework, a system designed to produce outcomes across a range of controlled and uncontrolled variables. Some vaults were meant to survive. Others were meant to teach Vault-Tec what survival costs. Understanding that distinction is essential, not just for understanding the vaults themselves, but for understanding what came after. Because the institutions that built the vaults did not disappear when the bombs fell. They adapted, they observed, and in some cases, they endured.